Welcome to the Digital Dose, where we talk about what actually works in healthcare, technology, and human well being. I'm your host, Zelcha Emanuel, and today's guest has spent 30 years helping people transform their lives. First, as a licensed clinical social worker, and now as a certified life coach with her own practice in Iowa. She works with children, adolescents, and adults across a wide range of challenges: anxiety, depression, addiction, grief, trauma, relationships, and career. But what makes her approach truly distinct is a method rooted in the cognitive science and neurobiology that starts with one deceptively simple idea: your thoughts cause your feelings, and everything else flows from there. She's the founder of LifeWell Coaching, Jolene Atkinson. Welcome to the Digital Dose.
Thank you. I'm very happy to be here, Zalta.
Thank you, and we are happy to have you. Jolene, you grew up as the second of 8 kids in a small Iowa town. That kind of upbringing, being surrounded by people, navigating family dynamics from very young age, shapes a person's in ways that are hard to fully articulate. Looking back, what did growing up in that environment teach you about how people think, feel, relate to each other, and what ended up forming you into the foundation in which you work?
Well, I think that it was definitely a unique experience. I learned how to negotiate, problem solve, communication skills. And those are all things that when you have siblings by the numbers that you become skilled at and very adept at. And I think too that in my family, my parents were great examples for the importance of connection with others. And that happens in a small town. You know everybody, everybody knows you, and you help one another. When you don't have strangers, you know what people's problems are and you know what their gifts are. So they're resources for you as well. So that importance of connection and community involvement was role modeled by my parents, and I saw every day how important it is to be of service to others.
Wow, I love that. What was the specific moment growing up where you realized you were naturally drawn to understanding what was going inside and not just on the surface?
Well, I think that it was not necessarily a specific moment. I noticed that as I was thinking, probably in high school, as I was thinking about what I was going to do after graduation, and I sought guidance from my guidance counselor, and I really did not receive any help from him. I felt it was not a good resource. And I thought, geez, I could do this. My friends have been asking me for help all my life. They came to me and I felt like I was a natural leader. I just took charge. And, being the second oldest, I was the oldest daughter in my family. I have 6 brothers and 1 sister. I was in charge a lot. So I felt like that was really natural for me. And so I think that in high school, I recognized that this was something that not everybody was interested in, or not everybody had the capacity to be a leader, and to be a good listener, which is what makes you a good leader. I think that that was the moment where I recognized that was a good path for me.
Wow. You spent decades working as a clinical social worker before, your founding of LifeWell Coaching. You worked with children's teams, families navigating mental health challenges, couples through marriage and divorce, and a full spectrum of human pain. After all of that clinical work, what made you decide to add life coaching to your practice? What could coaching do that therapy alone couldn't?
One of the things that I want to be really honest about is I had never heard of a life coach before, but during the pandemic, which for many, many people was a very difficult time in the mental health field, we saw the need just spike, and it has continued to remain high. And one of the things that I did to take care of myself was I would walk the neighborhood and listen to My daughter had a new job as a podcast producer, and hadn't listened to podcasts before either. And I came across the Life Coach School podcast, and one of the interviews was with a panel of professionals psychiatrists, clinical social workers, psychologists, and they were talking about life coaching and how life coaching was important and it had a place. And I got to thinking about this and recognized that I really was already doing a lot of life coaching within my mental health practice and hadn't considered how I might utilize that outside of my practice. And so this was really the first exposure that I had to the idea of providing an additional service separate from the mental health care. It's all mental health care, so just at different intensities. And I also had not done any kind of telehealth before. Utilizing video conferencing as a way to reach people was something that you dive in head first in a pandemic, evidently. And, that was something that we had to figure out how to do in my therapy practice, with like the turnaround of a day or two. And I saw that it could be very effective and where I hadn't realized that before. I had no exposure to it. I'd taken an online course, but not really thought of it as a way to reach clients. I thought you had to be with them to have a connection. And we certainly learned through those first 2 years of, the pandemic that it is different, but you could still connect to others. The other thing that happened is I understood more about life coaching and recognized that it would allow me to be accessible to anyone no matter where they lived. As a clinical social worker, I'm bound by the parameters of my license, and I'm licensed in Iowa and Illinois, so I could only serve clients who live in those states. Where with life coaching, that is not regulated in that manner. So I could access anyone anywhere. In my therapy practice, if I was working with teenagers, they graduated from high school and went on to college. If they left the state, they had to end therapy. And that was such a hard thing. Or one of the things that in my community is naval base, the arsenal. And those folks travel, they are transferred. And so I would work with a client and they would get moved to Kansas. And I I would have to end services and try and connect them. So I just saw the need is so important to be able to expand services and recognize the value of being able to connect virtually as well.
Makes perfect sense, and that is unfortunate that, somebody has to end service because they've moved because it takes so long for people to connect and really start to open up, and then here it is, they're going to college or some life change is happening, that moves them, and now they have to get familiar and start all over with somebody else, so that's a great segue to coaching.
Yes.
What's the difference in someone who walks through the door for coaching versus someone who comes in for therapy? Is it the same person at a different stage or a fundamentally different kind of client?
That's a great question. The way I explain it is with the analogy of therapist versus a coach. Let's imagine that I'm a runner and I become injured. And I would go to a physical therapist to rehab that injury. And I would utilize their services until I'm back up to a baseline where I'm healthy. And then I would hire a coach. And that coach would help me to improve my skills, help me to grow beyond kind of that baseline of being healthy. A lot of my clients, if that makes sense, like,
Yeah,
so,
yeah.
the physical therapist being like, a mental health therapist. So a lot of my clients in my therapy practice, um, utilize skills that I also teach in my coaching practice. So there is, an overlap. But coaching is not therapy. And, therapy is for those persons who are experiencing a disruption in their healthy functioning. And so I think it's an important distinction for people who are in need of that type of service to seek out a licensed clinician. But one way to look at it could be that, yeah, they're at a different stage, or it's probably more a matter of a different need. A person can benefit from both a therapist and a life coach. I just happen to be packaged together.
Absolutely, well, that makes sense. Well, you trained at the Life Coach School, described as a premier institution for life coaching certification. You came with 30 years of clinical experience. What did you learn there that surprised you? And what did coaching framework give you that all those years of clinical training hadn't?
Well, I do think that therapists make the best life coach. I'm biased in that way because there isn't anything that matches the clinical rigor that's required to be a licensed therapist, a clinician. What I found in the life coaching format was more a matter of it was very, I was able to learn more about on the business end of it. I certainly didn't learn how to promote myself in my clinical practice in the way that I did in life coaching. So there was the business element of it. But also, I think that the language that's used in life coaching was very much more, I guess, less clinical. And so it helped me hone my skills of communicating to a layperson what I know, not academic, not medically focused. So that was really valuable.
Was there a moment in that training where something shifted for you, where you thought, this is what I've been missing?
I think that with the life coaching, it is less directive. I'm, in my therapy practice, depending upon what the circumstances are, I can be fairly directive and offering, here's what you need to do to sleep better. Where in life coaching, it's a matter of what is it you want? What is it you're looking for? The questions are a different focus. So there's, again, as I mentioned, there's a lot of overlap, but it's very client driven in coaching.
Okay. Well, your coaching methodology that your thoughts cause our feelings. Our feelings drive our actions, and our actions create our results. That sounds almost too simple. Walk me through what it actually looks like when someone sits down with you for the first time and when you start applying that framework to their specific situation.
It's causal. So like it's what
Causal.
causes. So causal coaching, as you said, is the concept that our thoughts create our feelings. We're taught that it's the situation that causes us to feel a certain way. For example, you said these words and that made me feel excited or that made me feel angry. But actually, as I'm sitting down with a client, I'm listening to kind of what their thought process is to help them understand and gain personal awareness that it's their thought that causes the feeling, not the situation or the circumstances in their life. And so I help raise their awareness that it's the thinking, it's not the situation. And then once we understand, many people, again, aren't taught about our feelings. I spend time helping people understand and recognize their emotions and the vocabulary of that. As humans, we have the capacity to experience a wide range of emotions, positive and negative. There are no bad emotions. There's certainly some that I prefer not to experience very often, but there are no bad emotions. The skill is about being able to name the feeling that you're having, be able to regulate the intensity of that, and learn how to communicate that with other people. So that's another really important element of how I help people identify what they're thinking and how to experience and communicate their emotions in a healthy way, because everything that we do or don't do comes from the emotion that we're feeling. So it's deeper than just looking at you do this and this happens in your life. I exercise, I lose weight, I live longer, right? It is way more in depth than that. So the causal coaching helps with growing and expanding your personal awareness so that you can grow into the kind of healthy individual you want to be or accomplish the goals that you're seeking.
I love that. Causal. Okay. Thank you for the correction. What's the most common thought pattern you see that is quietly destroying people's results? The one that shows up again and again across completely different clients.
I have so many people tell me, I don't know. And that's so basic, right? Like, I don't know. They are not pausing enough to really consider and tap into their own knowledge and their experience. One of the things where I was so drawn to social work is that it had a combination of the psychology, which is the human mind and understanding of the individual, as well as the person in the environment. So it considers the context of their experiences, their culture, their relationships. I loved that blending. And so to know that we come with our own wealth of knowledge and to be able to tap into that. I don't know what's right or wrong for you as a client. You do. I'm going to help you see what that is and help you in making a decision and take the path that's right for you. So that's what comes to my mind, Zelcha, is just, I don't know how often I hear that from people. It's a thought area. You do know, there are a lot of reasons why I use that expression myself, but I try to utilize it and be intentional about when I say, I don't know, let me think, to add that pause in there and not just be stuck in, I don't know, I don't know, I don't know. That creates overwhelm and stress.
Yeah, 100%. Well, you work with an incredibly wide range, children's as young as 3, all the way through seniors, therapy, coaching, individuals, families. Most practitioners pick a lane. You work across a lot of it. What does, what does that breathe for experience give, that breadth of experience give you a more narrowly specialized practitioner might miss?
Well, I have studied play therapy all my career. I've worked with young children, and I think that has given me a really solid foundation in understanding child development. And we all start there. I mean, we all develop as children, and understanding that and applying that even in adulthood to be able to examine through a lens of, well, this happened when you were 10 years old. This is how 10-year-olds think. They're not mini adults. Their brain is only developed to a certain point. So I think that is offers me a really solid foundation in terms of what I can share for people. It also, I think, you know, through the lifespan, I also work with people who are, at end of life stages. So it just offers a wide depth of human experience and human development.
Makes sense. I love that. What does working with children teach you about adults and vice versa?
I think that one of the biggest things about being a play therapist is that it has taught me the importance of play in our life throughout the whole spectrum. I hope, should I be fortunate enough to live and be healthy at 90, that I play every day. I don't remember to do that now, to be honest with you, but it is the value that I have of the importance of being able to play. So I think that's probably what stands out to me most in answering that question.
Thank you for that. You wrote something that stopped me when I read it. You said you used to wear your busy schedule like a badge of honor. That's one of the most honest things I've read from a practitioner in the wellness space. What happened that made you stop wearing that badge, and what did you discover on the other side of it?
What happened was I felt burned out. And I really believe that you cannot give from an empty cup. And if I am not taking time to refill myself, take care of myself, I practice what I preach there. If I'm not taking time to fill up my cup, I cannot be good for my family. I'm not going to be healthy for myself, and I'm certainly not going to be healthy with my clients. And I think our society values busyness, and I'm committed to the idea that that is not healthy. And so when I recognized that I was feeling burnout and really needed to understand the importance of having boundaries around work is work, play is play, rest is rest, and the importance to pause and slow down, my life felt much richer. I was able to be more present with what I was doing in the moment. If I'm busy, I'm thinking about, oh, I just had this meeting an hour ago and I've got this, and this to do from that. And then when I get home tonight, there's this, and this I've got to do. I'm not able to be as present with you in our conversation. So I, I just think there's no need to have any kind of badge of honor around busyness.
Mm, I just have to pause on that one.
Yeah.
I hear you, and I love that. AI entered the mental health and coaching space in a very real way. Therapy, chat bots, AI wellness apps, digital coaches. You have 30 years of clinical experience and you know what actually creates change in a human being. What is your honest assessment of where AI can genuinely help in the mental wellness space and where it absolutely cannot replace the human connection?
Well, I just would say that it cannot replace the human connection. Um, I don't, a bot can't smile at you, a bot can't cry with you, and that is part of it is not emotion. It is not emotive. It can spit out information. It can lay out a plan for you, but it's not going to give you a hug when you need a hug. And I really value what AI can do, and I'm continuing to try and learn about AI, and I utilize it in marketing, utilize it to help me, be more concise. I can talk a lot, so it helps me with writing. It does not do the writing for me, but it just kind of helps me generate a way to communicate. I also use AI for research, which is really valuable. Helps, I think it generates information that I don't necessarily think about.
Mhm.
One of my daughter's friends, I was visiting her, um, and she has a very active mind, and she was talking to me about using AI as a therapist. She says, "I can't afford to go to a therapist right now." She goes, "But what I do is and I'm like, "Tell me more." And she says, "Oh, I open up this app and I just start," and she like, blah, 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 and she read to me some of what she put in. And she said, "And this is what my AI therapist said." I'm like, "Hold up. This is what the computer said." And it was, really not bad advice. And it summarized what she said, which was helpful and fed. So I was impressed by what it said to her. And but it did not offer the human touch, but it did help her calm down and get her thoughts out. So there was value in that. I can't argue that point. And I love that she shared that with me. So, but it isn't something that is going to replace me as a coach or me as a therapist. I'm not worried about that. And I know that everyone can't afford a life coach. Everyone can't afford or access a therapist. Iowa, I live in a metropolitan area, which is kind of funny talking to somebody who may be in New York. When I say I grew up in a small town, that was 1,000 people. So that's just like an itty bitty dot. And now I live in a bigger community, but I know, many, many people in, the rural areas don't have access or they have to drive. I have a client who drives an hour and a half to my practice. And that's not an easy thing to do. It's definitely not an easy thing to do. Last Monday we had a blizzard. So it's not an easy thing to do. So I think there's value in what AI can provide. That's
Wow.
a long answer to your question, but
No, I appreciate the answer. What does a client need from a coach or therapist that no algorithm can provide, no matter how sophisticated it becomes?
I think it goes back to empathy, and having some understanding of the emotional nature of what a human being is experiencing.
Totally agree. 100%. Well, you've built life well around the idea that self awareness and managing the mind is a real secret sauce. Not a goal setting, not accountability check ins, but learning to understand your own thoughts at a deeper level. As you look at where mental health and wellness is heading, do you think that we're moving closer to the kind of inner work or further away from it?
I would hope closer. I think that if I look back over my career, the last 10 years especially, the work that has been done to help take away the stigma of reaching out for mental health help, I think that is just continuing to grow. I love to hear, a 12-year-old in my office tell me that, yeah, my friend has a therapist too. Like, oh, yay. Yay. That's so exciting to me. That would That would not have happened 15 or 20 years ago. It would have been pretty rare if it did, and people felt ashamed about it. And I just see that trajectory growing, or my hope is that that continues to grow so that people access care, whether it's therapy or coaching. We're certainly at a time where mental health is in crisis and people need support. And again, I think it's just this, hopefully, the access will continue to grow.
Like, what's your read on the cultural movement we're in?
I think I would start from my concern first. I'm concerned about the culture, at least in America, of there's a right and there's a wrong. And if you don't believe what I believe, you're wrong. And I think that social media, I don't there's positive and negative to that, of course. One of the downsides is that it's so easy to be nasty. It's so easy to be judgmental. And uh, I don't think that's good for our mental health. It exposes us to so much potential negativity and harm. The positive side, of course, is that people can connect with like-minded people, and the importance will be to be open-minded, that I don't know it all. I'm not right. I'm not wrong. There's a lot of gray. And I think that it's important to continue to expose ourselves to other opinions and not exist in a silo of like-minded thinking. So that I guess that's my concern for the future is right now, I think we're in a time where things are so divided, dangerously so. And my hope for the future is that folks will look internally and examine their thinking and be open to being exposed to alternative ways of thinking so that, you know, we can all get along. It's my kumbaya hand holding hope for the future.
Love it. You work virtually, which means the geographical walls around where you can serve are essentially gone. LifeWell can reach someone in Iowa in the same way it can reach someone in Atlanta or New York or anywhere. Where do you want to take the practice? Is the goal to grow to a deeper specialized? What does the next chapter look like?
Well, I've been primarily focused on one-to-one service in my life coaching business. And I am, as of this year, developing a program. And it's niched a little bit in terms of I'm focusing on women in their midlife who are dealing with anxiety and stress and overwhelm. And the program is my vision for the program is designed to be both a digital product where someone can access information. Oftentimes find myself repeating concepts over and over again. And, I am a teacher at heart. And so I am developing a program where someone can utilize and access learning concepts and how to understand and put in place the tools of causal coaching, but also a hybrid method where people have access to me and where it's not just learning something, which I think online courses are great for, but it's the implementation and the emotional support that I think is a really important combination. So my path moving forward, in addition to continuing to offer some one-to-one coaching, is to have access to this group component, this hybrid module, educational, and the psychological support of implementing it.
Nice. Is there a population or problem space you haven't fully stepped into yet that you know you're being called towards?
I'm really interested in energy work, and one of the continuing education programs I'm considering is a therapeutic yoga. And it combines more, not just in yoga, but I'm interested in general about somatic work, which, focuses on your physical experience, your physical energy and healing. And I think that's an area that personally I'm interested in. And I bring somatic work into my therapy practice as well as my coaching practice. But I think that's something that I'm kind of nerd out about. So I guess energy work is something that I'm very intrigued by and want to learn and practice more of.
Great. Well, last question, and I want to be honest, not polish. For the person listening right now, you know they need to make a change in their career, their relationship, their mindset, their life, but keeps telling themselves they'll start when things calm down or when timing is better or when they feel ready. What do you actually say to that person?
I think when someone is overwhelmed or feeling like life is too busy, that is the perfect time to have a coach. Because as I was mentioning earlier, just having someone who is there for you to examine your thinking and to guide you through those most difficult, busy times, I don't think there's a better time, better benefit to having someone when you're feeling overwhelmed to know how to manage that stress and have strategies and support to do that.
What's the thought they need to challenge first before anything else can shift?
I think that depends upon the problem that they're looking at, but understanding that it's what I think that causes me to feel and act a certain way. And so to be able to know that it's important for me to pause and listen to the message, the sentences in my head, that's the first step.
Okay. Yeah. The pause. Well, Jolene, I appreciate your time. We have come to the end of our recording. You've given our listeners something they don't always get in conversation about mental health, and we definitely appreciate that. A framework that is both deeply compassionate and rigorously practical. The idea that our thoughts are the cause of everything else in our lives sounds simple, and that changes everything for anyone who wants to work with and explore LifeWell coaching or just start a conversation. Where do they find you?
Thank you. I can be contacted through my website at lifewellcoaching.com. And I'm also on social media, Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, but the easiest way is through my website.
Well, thank you for that. Thank you so much, Jolene. It's been a privilege and a pleasure and an honor to have this conversation with you. Thank you so much for joining us on the Digital Dose.